First and foremost, Rhuidia is a world of magic, mystery, and things you have to see to believe. What is a common occurrence in one place may be a nearly forgotten myth in another, and the only thing keeping it that way is lack of curiosity. The denizens of Rhuidia disagree very much about the cosmology and origins of their world, but one thing they all agree on, though they may refer to it by different names, is the existence of origin. Origin is the word used by many Hydronian and Terran societies to describe the source of all energy and magic in the entire world. It's less of a physical object and more of an omnipresent well of power that magic users reach out to and dip into in order to cast magic. Most sentient beings can sense its presence at all times, whether they use it or not, and thus it's widely understood to be the common source for magic and all 12 elements across all cultures. This is probably the only thing that Rhuidian civilizations can agree on, however. Some particular Infernian cities famously don't believe in snow, for example, just because the majority of their citizens have simply never seen it. In some places, something like a dragon or a unicorn might be only a fairy tale believed by children, but in other places, only a few hundred miles away, they live alongside people and are an accepted facet of reality. The reason for this is well known to scholars, even if it isn't as widespread among others. Around 600 years ago, a great and all-encompassing calamity had ravaged the entire world, killing the vast majority of the population, shuffling continents and climates, and generally causing upheaval in every corner of the realm. This is referred to by many as the erasure, because all living evidence of the world before it was virtually erased. All that remains are ruins and faint echoes of the civilizations that came before. Thus, most of the world is in a comparatively fresh and untamed state. Kingdoms and cities have not had the time to build into grand, sprawling empires. Most cultures have not had the time to form lasting values and ideals. And those with ill intent find themselves poised to spread their influence far more effectively in Rhuidia than they could in a long-established civilization. Swaths of land remain uncharted. Countless monsters, animals, plants, and even demi-human subspecies remain undiscovered, and the secrets that were buried by the erasure are only just beginning to be laid bare. Long before the erasure, and longer still before the formation of Antaria, Ontos, Zalgax, and even Celestia, there existed nothing but one singular consciousness, and a separate body for it to inhabit. This consciousness would come to be known in our era as Rhuideus, but has gone through many monikers and aliases in the time since its inception. The body, now commonly understood to be a much larger and more ancient version of what we call origin, was simply a vast collection of energy and power, spread throughout the vacant existence of the Age of Synthesis. During the Age of Synthesis, Rhuideus took great care to sculpt and chisel this raw energy into at least 12 living things, which could serve as representatives of its will. These pieces of origin were then severed from its flow, allowing them to reach back in and sculpt to their own desires. Known as the original conclave, these beings were the first creatures to carry both consciousness and physical bodies, as Rhuideus and Origin existed separately. The first pair to be created were Theia and Fengar, the goddess of light and the god of shadow. They served as embodiments of Rhuideus' desire to create a world of balance and justice, and initially took the forms of the sun and the moon. Neither were created to be good or evil, but to represent all sides of judgment, justice, and authority. Next, 4 more came into being at once: Pagiros, Achelion, Zesta, and Fulgora. They represented the 4 core elements which composed Origin's boundless and complicated energy, thus explaining why true magic tends to utilize the elements of ice, water, fire, and thunder more than any others. Pagiros and Zesta, the god of ice and the goddess of fire, adopted incredibly different personalities, and often got into disagreements with one another. Achelion and Fulgora, however, the god and goddess responsible for the elements of water and thunder, respectively, treated each other more as friendly rivals who competed against one another with more and more spectacular creations. In time, the 6 initial deities churned and fought with one another about how exactly the creation of the planet would be undertaken. Zesta wanted to engulf the world in the warming flames of love and emotion. Achelion wanted to create a tranquil sea of calm waters. Fulgora wanted the world to be dynamic and ever-changing, and Pagyros wanted a cold, orderly arrangement of Origin's energy to serve as their canvas. None could agree, however, and so Rhuidian fashioned 3 more figures: Gaia, the goddess of earth; Typhon, the god of wind; and Epione, the goddess of life. These 3 worked tirelessly to mold a solid yet forgivingly malleable world for Epione to fill with the first living creatures, humans. Every other god was impressed with the perfect craftsmanship on display in the human being, emotional, intellectual, and physical. The mountains that Gaia created served as homes, and the valleys and craters Typhon carved out of the surface of the world gave it contour and hollows for Achelion to fill with seas. With the creation of humankind, the age of synthesis came to a close and gave way to the age of discovery, a time when humans and gods alike experimented with Origin and its unlimited power to create marvels that have since been forgotten by time. Many things from this time existed only momentarily, never to return or be known to us in the modern day, and speculation about the beings and structures that may have arisen during the age of discovery remains a popular topic of discussion to this day. Only 9 of the 13 gods existed at this point, but by the end, the world was full of all imaginable plants, animals, and spirits. Great cities were built, and all was peaceful for millennia, but this was not to last. The Age of Fear would begin when Rhuidian inexplicably created the next 2 gods, Sideris and Dilataris. Sideris was the god of metal, an element that was unnatural and only held meaning once humans shaped it into tools and weapons. He sought to enact power structures and formed governments with strict codes and complicated laws to oppress those ignorant of his plans, enforcing doctrine on an otherwise peaceful and egalitarian populace. Dilataris was much more direct in his oppression, however. After thousands and thousands of years, humans had lived impossibly long lives, and Dilataris was the first to end a life in the history of the world. He was the god of death, the counterpart and enemy of Epione, the goddess of life and creator of humankind. Chaos ensued as Dilataris wiped out city after city, with the other 9 gods working together as much as possible to curb the destruction. During the Age of Fear, it is estimated that roughly 70% of all life perished, leaving behind remnants of a discouraged and hierarchical society. In the wake of this tragic loss of life, the 12th and final deity would be molded into existence by Rhuidian, Tithoria, the goddess of plants, commonly known as the Queen of the Forest. Her duty was to counter Sideris, supplying humanity with the means to restore their humor and begin their revelry once more. The 2 still remain locked in conflict to this day, however, meaning that some still cling to the harsh, rigid political structures of Sideris. The dwindling of humanity's spirit and numbers was discouraging for all 12 gods, and Rhuidian made the decision to wipe the slate clean. This is when the erasure took place, when all life was eradicated in favor of a fresh start. Instead of doing things the exact same, though, the original conclave decided to make a pact. Each deity would get their own subspecies of human beings, carved directly out of Origin's power and infused with the elemental attunement they presided over. This led to the creation of the 12 races and the ushering in of the modern age, which I'm sure you're far more familiar with given the publication date of this very book. For further reading on the creation of the other realms and the creation of the 12 races, the following recommendations are available. Virtue Remembered by Dotha Rimvar, Mauka's Guide to Zalgax by Mauka IV, The Lights of Ontos by Willekert Junsby, and What Color Are Phyluxian Eyes by Umbalin Santoki. Thank you for listening to this excerpt of Rhuidian Fates